If you're looking for a classy party dress, let me show you how I made this. My name is Lena, and in today's video we are going to make this beautiful party dress. Let's get into the video. It's Lena Fashion Hub. It's Lena Fashion Hub. For this project, you'll be needing the above measurements, and you need your paper, your sewing tools, 2 yards of crepe fabric and 4 yards of organza. If you don't want the organza to be as full as mine, you can reduce it to 3 yards or 2 yards. So I placed my tape on the paper. I minused the 5 inches off shoulder. Then I went ahead to mark my bust point, my under bust, and my half length. Okay, so when you are placing the tape on the paper, because we are offing is an off shoulder gown and we are taking out the 5 inches, there is no need to mark the full length with the 5 inches, then later we cut it off. So it's better you just place your tape in a way that it will enable you just place your tape and minus the 5 inches, then go ahead and mark the rest of your measurement. So after rolling a straight line on my bust point, my under bust, and my half length, I went ahead to mark my nipple to nipple measurement. My nipple to nipple measurement is 8 inches, so divide by 2 is 4 inch, because I'm going to cut this on fold. So after marking my nipple to nipple measurement on my bust point, my under bust, and my half length, I just did that to have a straight line. So I will use my ruler and roll a straight line all the way down. So on the center front that is close to on the center front part, I marked 0.75 inch for my dart intake. Then on the side bust part, I marked 1.25 inch for my dart intake. So that means my total dart intake is 2 inches. Okay, so if you are very busty, you can go ahead and use 2.5 inch, but these 2 inches work for most bust sizes within 42 inches. Okay, so I roll a straight line on the both parts from the under bust to the half length. So I went ahead to label it so that we know where our bust points, our half length, and our under bust is. So from the bust point line, I came down by 1 inch. Then I used my pattern master, place your ruler the way it is, like so, then curve it to connect it to the under bust. Okay, then I'll do the same thing to the other side of the dart line. So this will bring out our bust cuff. So after bringing out the bust cuff, be very gentle when you are doing this. So after bringing out the bust cuff, the next thing now, to your shoulder pad, you mark your shoulder divide by 2 minus 2 inches. Now my shoulder divide by 2 is 8 inch. My shoulder is 16, so minus 2 inches, that will give me 6 inch. So I'll just connect it with a straight line to join with the bust point. So after connecting with a straight line, I took out 0.75 inch on both sides of that line, the part that is facing the center bust and the side bust. I took out 0.75 inch, making it 1.5 inch for bust tightening. So I just connect the lines like so back to the bust point. Okay, so at this point, I went ahead to replace back the 1.5 inch that we just took out for our chest tightening. So I marked the 1.5 inch, and that part will now become my armhole depth part. So my armhole depth, to know your armhole depth, you divide your bust by 6 inches plus 1.5 inch. So that will give you your armhole depth. But instead of marking it as a normal armhole depth, please go ahead and minus your 5 inches, then mark it. So at this point, I marked 2 inches, but I ended up using 2.5 inch as my armhole depth. Okay, so that is what I just explained. I used 2.5 inch because I didn't want it to, cover my armpit. If you want it to cover your armpit, please go ahead and use 2 inches as your armhole depth. So at the armhole depth point, I marked my bust divide by 4, which is 9.25. Then at my waistline, I also went ahead to mark my waist divide by 4, which is 8.25 inches. So at the point of my bust area, I had to replace back the dart leg that connects to the 1.5 inch. I had to replace it back. So measure what is missing at that point, then replace it back. So at this point, I mark my waist divide by 4. Also, the same thing, you replace back your dart. So my dart is 2 inches. After marking my waist divide by 4, I went ahead to replace the 2 inches back. So you connect a straight line. After doing that, after marking your waist, go ahead and connect a straight line to connect it to the bust point. Then I also added my sewing allowance of 1.5 inch. That is what I just did now. Then I connected it with a straight line back to the bust point. Okay, so after connecting a straight line, go to your bust line to take out your bust dart. Now this bust dart is the difference between your front half length and your back half length. My front half length is 18 inches and my back half length is 16.5. So the difference between my front half length and my back half length is 1.5 inch. So that is what I just marked. So on your bust point line, at the side allowance, at the side line, just come down by 1.5 inch, then connect it to your bust point. So after connecting it to my bust point, we are done drafting the front pattern. So all we need to do is just connect our armhole curve just the way you see me doing so. After doing that, I went ahead to roll a straight line, and this straight line is going to be my starting point for my back panel. That straight line is going to be the start point for my back panel. So I went ahead to mark my zip allowance. I used 1.5 inch for my zip allowance for this project. If you want to use more for your zip allowance, you can go ahead and extend it and add and mark more than 1.5 inch. So after marking my 1 inch, I also roll a straight line at my zipper allowance point. So after rolling the straight line, I marked 1.5 at both the up part and the down part to enable me to have a straight line. After rolling a straight line, I made that same 6 inches we had at the up part, which is our shoulder measurement divided by 2 minus 2 inches. I marked the same thing at the the chest part of the back panel. I also went down by 2 inches, which I later used 2.5 inch to mark my armhole depth. I am very sorry that part of the video is not showing. I didn't notice that my camera didn't get to that point. So after marking it at that same armhole depth point, I went ahead to mark my bust divide by 4, 9.25 plus my 1.5 inch sewing allowance. Same thing I did for the front. Then I curved my armhole depth. Exactly the same thing I did for the front. So at this point, I'm taking my back armhole, my back half length. So my back half length is 16.5. I marked it 15.5 first before I remembered it's 16.5, please. My back half length is 16.5. Remember the 1.5 inch that we took out at our bust dart. That point will help our back half length and the front half length to be the same when we are joining it by the side. So at my half length line, that's my waistline, I went in by my bust divide by 2, and at the chest line I also went in with my nipple to nipple measurement divide by 2. So at this point I just went ahead to extend that line at the armhole depth. So I rolled a straight line at my nipple to nipple measurement, which is 4 inch. Then I now went ahead to take my dart intake on both sides of the line. So I took 0.5 inch on both sides of the line. Then I connected it to the chest line, which is the armhole depth line, with a straight line like so. So after connecting my dart line with a straight line, the next thing is to mark my waist measurement divide by 4 at the waist line. Remember, we already marked the bust measurement divide by 4. So my waist measurement divide by 4 plus I replaced back the 1 inch dart allowance, then the 1.5 sewing allowance. Then I roll it with a straight line and connect it to the bust line. So at the waistline, I went in by 0.5 inch at the zipper area. I'm going to cut out that point, and that point is going to help me with my zipper bulge. Okay, so if you want to eliminate any form of zipper bulge because you know your back is not entirely straight, you take out that same 0.5 inch at that point. Okay, so because I'm not going to add hand to this dress, I'm going to cut off the armhole point. I'm not going to add hand, so it's not necessary that the armhole point is there. So I'll just cut through from the armhole depth line. But before I did that, at my mid back, I came down by 1 inch for the neckline. So my back neckline, I came down by 1 inch, which I later reduced by 2 inches to make it lower. Okay, so I came down by 1 inch for my back neckline. Then I curved it all the way. You see how I curved it? I curved it to connect to the armhole depth line. So at this point, we are done with our marking and we'll go ahead and cut through our pattern. If you see, just see the way I cut it straight from the armhole depth line. So I went ahead to separate that intake line, which of course this part is not very necessary. You can choose not to separate your back dart and just sew it along. Okay, so at that point I just added those arrows so that when I'm cutting it on my fabric, I can notch that point to know that that is the side I am joining both of them. I also added arrow at the up part so that I can also to indicate that that is the up part of the clothes. Please, this part is very necessary for you to do, because if you don't, at the end of the day, your pattern might appear the same and you'll be very confused on which part to join to which part when you're about to sew it. Okay, so for the front part, I also added the neckline. I came down by 1 inch for the neckline of the front. Of course, I later changed it to 2 inches. I'm going to show us a video on how I alter all of this when I realized that it was too high for me. I had to reduce it. So I came down by 1 inch. Then from there, at the side bust that area, I placed my tape like so, and I connect it in a curved way to give it a gentle sweetheart neckline, and I connected it to my armhole area, just the way you see me doing. Okay, so if you were going to add a sleeves to this dress now, curving it at that point will not be necessary. You would curve it back to your armhole line so that it will enable you to add your armhole. Okay, so I went ahead and cut through the dart just the way you see me doing, and I cut my neckline and I cut my other dart intake. Okay, so when you are cutting the side, remember to tape your bust dart, your side bust dart, the 1.5 inch dart intake that we took, remember. So that's the way we are going to take it. You are just going to fold just the way you see me doing. Just follow the dart line, fold it with the dart line, then match it to your bust line. Like, fold it the way the dart line is when you draw it, then match it to your bust line. So as you're matching it, you notice that your side line are no longer equal. So you're just going to use your ruler and rule a straight line to join to your bust point. Okay, so before you rule that straight line, just go ahead and add your tape so that that part will just rest and be at a place. Then you now roll a straight line that connects that your side line that is shifting because of the folding to your bust line. Then you go ahead and cut it off. Okay, so please make sure that you use your tape, or you can as well use an office pin for that part. Then of course, label your pattern. So I'm just going to put an arrow up, so that next time as you are using the pattern, we'll know that that part is facing up. And we'll also put the arrow by the side that will be joining the two parts. Okay, so this is the crepe fabric I'm using, and as you can see, I'm trying to test the fabric. Now, to know how to test your fabric and know the part that is supposed to face the length and the part that is supposed to face the width, I have a video tutorial on the channel, the 5 mistakes that new beginners in sewing make. Watch that video and you're going to learn how to properly test your fabric and know which point to use as the length and the point to use as your width. Okay, so I already went ahead to cut my fabric. I used my then I added my 1.5 inch for my zip allowance. So I went ahead to mark my waist measurement divided by 4, which is 8.25. So after marking my waist measurement divided by 4, I marked my hip depth. So my hip depth is 9.5 inch. Then after marking my hip depth, at that my hip depth point, at my waistline, I added my sewing allowance. For the up part, remember we used 1.5 inch as our sewing allowance. So that's the same thing that we are going to do to the down part. So I mark my hip divided by 2 plus my sewing allowance. Then at the hem of the gown, because the length of this gown is 36 inches. So at the hem of my gown, I marked everything I had at my hip. I minus 1.5 inch. Please minus 1.5 inch. Whatever you have at your hip measurement, minus 1.5 inch, except you have a very thick thigh. So this is the part I confirmed my gown length. So I placed my tape, I minus my half length, then I now mark my gown length. So I used 36 as my gown length. Then I added 1 extra inch for my folding. I wanted to add 1 extra inch, but I went ahead to add 1.5 extra inch for my folding. So I'm just going to mark the same thing at this other part to enable me to have a straight line when I'm rolling the line. So I went ahead to roll a straight line, and that there becomes my gown length. Okay, so it's not compulsory that you have to use 1.5 inch as your folding allowance. However you are going to fold the dress, you can use 1 inch as your folding allowance. So I use my pattern master just the way you see me doing, and I connect from my hip line to my knee line, just like so. Then I did the same thing for the up part. I connect from my waistline to my hip line. But before I do that, I'll also add, after connecting from my waistline to my hip line, a very gentle curve, please. Your hip curve needs to be very gentle. Okay? At that point, at the zip allowance point, I went in by 1 inch to also tighten the butt. Okay, so I went in by 1 inch at that point for my for my butt contour. All right, so that the back of the dress, the back part at the lap area will go in, and my butt will sit just the way it's supposed to. So at the waist, at the zip area, I also went in by 0.5 inch for my zipper bulge. Remember, we did the same thing at the upper part. If you don't remove it here, you are going to end up with excess at the down part. So I marked out my zip length at the down part. I wanted my zip length to be at 9.5 inch. Then I connected from that part to the 1 inch that I marked, and then I'll also go ahead and connect from that part to my zipper area. Now this is the point that helps you. What we just did now is what is going to help us shaping the down dress so that the down will be very tight. Now at the back, at the butt part, you can also use, at that zipper part at the down part, you can use 1.5 inch if you want yours to be very tight. Now I love comfortable dresses, and I ended up using just 1 inch. Okay, then at the waist area, I added 1.5 inch for my zipper for my dart intake, though that my dart is going to be only at the back part. So I'm going to show you now how I will cut my front part. So after cutting it, I'll just go ahead and lift this fabric. I'm going to go ahead and lift it to take out that part. But before then, we are going to cut out our butt contour line. That line I took out 1 inch from. Then we cut out a zipper bulge intake as well. So at this point, I just said, let me smoothen out the up part so that it's going to be very, very flat. Okay, so that it will be on a straight line, sorry. So I lifted up the upper part because I don't want to add that at my at the front part, the front panel. So I lifted it up and I cut out the dart. So my dart is going to be at the back part only. So I also went ahead and separate my zip area, and we are done with the cutting of this dress. Okay, so moving to this to the dart, I'm trying to mark the dart for the down part. So I brought in my panel because I want the dart line to match. So I brought in my panel and I marked where the dart is, and I went ahead to mark the 1.5 inch I added for the dart. So on fold, the dart intake is going to be 0.75 inch. So after marking the 1.5 inch, I notch those 2 points, right? So that when I go to my sewing machine, I just fold it together and I sew. Okay, so when you get to the sewing machine, this is how you are going to do it. Just fold it together. Those 2 points, dart points, you just sew it down with a straight line. The length of my dart is going to be 5 inches, okay? So you can do same, or you can even use 6 inches as the length of your dart. So after marking the length of my dart, I'm going to repeat the same thing to the other side of the panel, right, when I'm sewing, okay? So I brought in the front panel, I brought in the front part after marking the back part. Now, this step is very important. As you can see, I just notch the zip area at the upper part. It's very important you notch this, because when you are done, both the up part and the down part is going to look really similar. So if you don't notch it, you are not going to know which side is the up part and which side is the down part. So for the front panel, I also notch the up part to enable me know which side is facing the up part, okay? So you are going to add both of them together like so, and just shape it by the side with your sewing allowance. You know, we added 1.5 inch as our sewing allowance, and that is what we are going to use during our shaping. So do the same to the other side. So when we are done, I already went ahead to cut our up panel, and I added all the necessary allowances that we need. As you can see, I added allowance at the up part, the down part, the side, and the zip area, okay, because I'll be turning that zip area with that 1/2 inches. So I added that 1/2 inch so that when we are done turning the zip area with the 1/2 inch, we'll still end up having our 1.5 inch that we added at the down part of the gown, okay? So I also notched the part that I'm sewing to the other side, the dart part, okay, and I also notched the up part to enable me know which side is the up part and which side I am joining to the other side. Okay, so I cut 4 pieces of this. So 2 pieces I added a stitch to it, and then 2 pieces will serve as the lining. I did the same thing to this other part. I also added a 1/2 inch all the way round, including the side, so that when I turn the side with the 1/2 inch, I will still have my 1.5 inch to join it with the down part. So I went ahead to notch the up part and the side that I will be joining to my dart side. This one I cut 4 pieces as well. So for the front area, I cut 2 pieces of the front area. Of course, we are cutting the side, the center bust on fold, and I notch my under bust. Please remember to notch your under bust, because that notch is very important. We know where to add our breast pad and stop when we are adding our breast pad. So for the side bust as well, I added 1/2 inch by the side at the up part and at the bust area and the down part. So the 1/2 inch by the down part is for me to join it with the skirt part. Before you join your side bust to your center bust, please remember to iron a breast part to it. I have a video on the channel on how to sew a madam blouse. In that video, I explain in details on how to add your breast part to your bustier. Okay, so this is our back panel. The 2 back panel, at that point we'll join both of them together, right side facing each other, and we'll do the same thing to the lining. Then when we are done, I'll come and show us what it looks like. So I'll just join the lining and the fabric. After that, I went ahead to sew my join my bustier together. This is when I finished ironing the breast pad to it. If you want to learn how to iron the breast pad, as I said, I have a tutorial on the channel where I describe step by step on how to iron your breast pad to your bustier. So at this point, I make sure that my under bust notch is matching each other, and I secure it with a pin so that when I'm sewing, it doesn't move. Okay, so from the half length line, just go ahead and join it together by 1/2 inch. Nothing serious, just sew it all the way up by 1/2 inch. Make sure that every single part of this bustier is matching each other so that the shape will come out exactly how it's supposed to come out. Okay, so after joining both of them together, I'll go ahead and notch properly. I will show us what to also do to avoid any form of bulkiness. Okay, so we know that breast pad is heavy, so to avoid bulkiness, just go ahead to lift only the breast pad and cut it off. Lift only the breast pad and cut it off. So do the same to the other side of the bustier, and when you finish joining the side bustier together with the center bustier, do the same thing to this part before you iron. So at this point, I was done cutting off the breast pad, right? So I'll just go ahead and open those lines and give it a good press. Then I also notice I have some excesses at the up part. Please, this is not serious. Just go ahead and trim off any form of excess fabric at the up part. I went ahead to put my lining on top of the main fabric, right side facing each other. I also have to make sure that the dart line are all matching, the bustier dart line are all matching. Please, this is very important. So after matching all the bustier dart line, I'm going to insert my strap into that part where I just pointed at the bustier line. I'll put my strap, then I'll close the up part. Okay, so after closing the neckline, I'll also close the two side by 1/2 inch. Okay, then I'll flip it out and give it a good press. Then for the back, I was done joining both of them together at the dart line. So I also did the same thing to the lining. I'm going to also put it together, right side facing each other. So at this point, I was trying to look for the notch that I made at the upper part so that I can make sure that the upper part is facing the up part of the main cloth. Then we'll also go ahead and close the up part of the neckline of the back, and also the zip part, we'll close it by 0.5 inch and also close the side by 0.5 inch. Flip it to the right side and give it a good press. So this is the part I did some alterations. Remember, we marked the neckline, we off 5 inches. Our off shoulder was 5 inches. So this is the part I reduced it to 6 inches. I took out 1 inch as the off shoulder because I felt 5 inches was too high. So I took out 1 inch at the center. I took out 1 inch at the bustier line. But at the armhole line, remember that we marked 2 inches as depth. So that is the part I took out 1/2 inches to make it 2.5 inch. Okay. So I did the same to the back panel. So that is the armhole as well. I took out 0.5 inch at the armhole area. Then at the mid back, I took out 1.5 inch, making it 2.5 inches as the back neckline. Okay, then I connected it back to the armhole point. If you want yours to be high, you can leave it that way. Okay, so when I was done with all the alterations, I went ahead to shape the side by 1.5 inch. Okay, you see that I've already turned everywhere inside to make it very neat. So at this point, I was also done with our skirt part. I had joined the two sides together by the same 1.5 inch that we added. Then I also added my dart allowance. Remember, we added our dart allowance to the back part. I also added my dart allowance on fold 0.75 inch, making it the 1.5 inch dart allowance we added. Okay, so to join the half length to the skirt part of the cloth, I also have to make sure that the dart is matching with the up part. The side allowance also have to match with that of the up part. Then I'll go ahead and join it by 0.5 inch. So when I'm done with that, I folded my down part with 1/2 inch in, 1/2 inch in. After folding my down part, I went ahead to give it a good press before I started working with the organza. So at this point, I had given my down part a good press. I also added my zip allowance. With this zip allowance that we added, that's the 1.5 zip allowance that we added. Then I added my strap to the front. Then as for the back, I will just tag it at the back part. Okay, so for the down part, I went ahead to iron my allowance after sewing it. My folding allowance, I iron it so that it will be very flat after sewing it. So I started working on the organza. So the width of the organza is 29 inches and the length is the whole of the 4 yards. So the width being 29 inches, it gave me 2 pieces of organza. So I joined both of them together. So after joining both of them together to give me a length that will be 8 yards, I put it together facing each other, right? I folded it into 2. Then I closed the up part down to the down part. And after closing it, I gave it a good press. Then I now sew at that point that I closed. That is the line that I sew my gather line. So I sew the gather line at that point that I closed 1/2 inches. Then I gather it to the length I wanted it to be. So at this point that I'm sewing the organza to the gown, you can decide to play around it. You can decide to, add it round, right, at the hem of the gown. But for the sake of this tutorial, I added it from my hip part, from one side of my hip part down to the hem. Then I turned it to the back and joined it again at the hip part. Okay, so this part is not as easy as it looks like, because you need to be very sure that the gather is of the same volume at every part. Before you start sewing this part, I will recommend you use your chalk and make a line from the hip part, all the way around, so that when you are sewing, you know that you are just following that line to sew it. If you have any difficulty while making this dress, don't forget to leave it in the comment section. I'll be replying all the comments. Let me know in the comment section if this tutorial was helpful to you in any way. Also, turn on your post notification, subscribe to this channel so that when we post new videos, you will be the first to see it. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.